You know the feeling, 3 in the morning. Your mind won't stop. It's replaying that conversation you had 3 days ago. It's imagining conversations that haven't even happened yet. It's creating problems that don't exist. And you're lying there exhausted, knowing you have to wake up in 4 hours, but your mind has other plans. This is overthinking. And it's costing you everything: your sleep, your relationships, your confidence, your peace. But here's what most people don't understand. Overthinking isn't a thinking problem. It's a control problem. And today, I'm going to teach you the exact system to break this cycle, take back your mind, and finally experience the peace you deserve. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Overthinking is not your fault, but it is your responsibility. Let me start with the most important thing you need to hear right now. This is not your fault. Your overthinking is not a character flaw. It's not stupidity. It's not a weakness. It's biology. Your brain was built to do this. Your ancestors survived because their brains obsessed over threats. They replayed dangerous situations. They imagined worst-case scenarios. That hypervigilance kept them alive when the world was genuinely dangerous. Your brain inherited that same programming. So when you lie awake at 3 in the morning replaying a conversation you had 3 days ago, your brain isn't malfunctioning. It's doing exactly what it was designed to do. It's trying to protect you. Here's the problem, though. Your brain is trying to protect you from the wrong thing. Your brain thinks you're in physical danger. It activates your fight or flight response to a social interaction that made you uncomfortable. It floods your body with cortisol and adrenaline because your brain genuinely believes you need to be ready to run or fight. But you're not being chased. Nobody is hunting you. The threat isn't real. Your brain's threat detection system is miscalibrated for modern life. It treats social rejection like a predator attack. It treats uncertainty like imminent danger. It treats a difficult conversation like a survival crisis. Your brain is trying to protect you, but it's protecting you from the wrong thing. This is crucial because it changes everything. You're not broken. You're not fundamentally flawed. You're not defective. You're just running an outdated operating system in a modern world. That's not a flaw. That's a condition. And conditions can be changed. But here's where most people get stuck. They understand this and think understanding changes anything. It doesn't. I need to be direct with you about this because it's costing you everything. Thousands upon thousands of people understand exactly how their brains work. They can explain the neuroscience. They can tell you about the amygdala, the fight or flight response, and the default mode network. They can explain the entire mechanism perfectly. And they still spend 3 hours ruminating about something that happened a month ago. They still can't sleep because their mind won't stop analyzing. They still feel anxiety creeping up before social interactions. Understanding the mechanism changes nothing without intervention. Understanding without action is just another form of overthinking. You're just using your intellect to stay trapped, rather than your emotions. The difference between someone who breaks free from this and someone who stays stuck isn't intelligence. It's not insight. It's not even the severity of their overthinking. The difference is simple. One person decided to interrupt the pattern. The other person decided to understand it instead. One person said, "I know why this is happening, and I'm going to do something about it anyway." The other person said, "I understand the biology, so now I can forgive myself for staying stuck." You need to understand something right now. You need permission to stop being the victim of your own mind. You are not broken. You are not weak. You are not fundamentally flawed because your thoughts spiral. You are untrained. That's all. Your mind is like an untrained dog. An untrained dog doesn't obey. It runs everywhere. It chases anything that moves. It destroys things. It pulls on the leash. Is the dog broken? No. Is the dog defective? No. The dog is untrained. And an untrained dog can be trained. It happens all the time. Your mind is exactly the same. You don't need a different mind. You don't need medication to change your brain chemistry. You don't need therapy to fix what's broken. You need training. You need discipline. You need a system. You are exactly who you need to be to solve this problem. You have the capacity. You have the intelligence. You have the awareness. What you've been lacking is the system and the decision to apply it. And you have both of those things right now. You understand the biology. You understand why this is happening. You understand that it's not your fault. Now here's the part that is your responsibility. What do you do about it starting today? Whether you interrupt the pattern or accept it, whether you take action or stay trapped in understanding. Your brain is trying to protect you, but it's protecting you from the wrong thing. And you're the only one who can change that. Now that you understand the source of the problem, let's talk about the cost. What you're overthinking is actually stealing from you. Chapter 2: The Hidden Cost of Living in Your Head. You need to understand something that most people never face directly. Overthinking has a price. Not a small one. A massive one. And until you truly feel the weight of that cost, you won't be motivated to change. You'll stay comfortable in the familiar trap. You'll keep telling yourself you'll work on it tomorrow. But tomorrow never comes because you haven't confronted what this is actually costing you. Let me be specific about this. Every single hour you spend in repetitive thought is an hour you didn't spend building something. It's an hour you didn't spend creating. It's an hour you didn't spend connecting with someone who matters. It's gone. You can't get it back. Time is the only truly finite resource you have, and you're spending it on mental loops. On conversations that already happened. On scenarios that will never happen. On worries about things you can't control. But it gets worse. The cost doesn't end with wasted time. When you're trapped in your head, you're not present in your body or in your relationships. You're sitting across from someone you care about, but you're not really there. Your body is in the room. Your mind is somewhere else. They can feel it. People have an instinctual sense when someone isn't genuinely with them. They feel the distance. They sense the distraction. They interpret your scattered attention as a lack of care. So your relationships suffer. Not because you don't care, but because your overthinking is preventing you from showing up fully. And over time, that distance compounds. It creates real separation. It damages real connections. Here's what else your overthinking costs you. Every opportunity you miss because you're too busy analyzing to act. The job you didn't apply for because you spent 2 weeks convincing yourself you weren't qualified enough. The person you didn't talk to because you were running imaginary conversations in your head about all the ways it could go wrong. The idea you didn't pursue because you were too busy thinking about obstacles instead of solutions. The risk you didn't take because you were stuck in analysis paralysis. These aren't small costs. These are the actual events of your life passing by while your mind is occupied with what might happen instead of what's actually happening. And then there's the psychological cost that accumulates underneath everything else. Overthinking and anxiety are deeply connected. A moment of worry is natural. It's normal. But when you take that moment and replay it 100 times in your mind, you're not processing the worry anymore. You're building it. You're deepening the neural pathway. You're essentially practicing anxiety. Every single repetition strengthens the association between the trigger and the fear response. You're not feeding your anxiety with additional thoughts. You are rebuilding the highway that leads to it. So your anxiety gets worse. It becomes more persistent. It shows up more easily. Because you've been practicing it every single day. This is the invisible cost that compounds silently. Year after year. Your anxiety grows not because something externally is getting worse, but because your mind is rehearsing the fear response on repeat. You are, without realizing it, training yourself to be more anxious. That's the power of repetitive thought. It's training. And right now you're training yourself in the wrong direction. Your career suffers too. It's something nobody talks about directly, but it's real. When you're overthinking, you can't make decisions. You second-guess yourself in meetings. You dilute your message because you're anticipating every possible objection instead of speaking with clarity and conviction. You avoid taking action because you're running 17 simulations of what could go wrong. And the people who get promoted aren't smarter than you. They're just thinking less and doing more. They're making decisions with incomplete information and moving forward. They're creating momentum. You're creating paralysis. And over time, that gap widens. They advance. You stay stuck. You can feel all of this happening, can't you? Maybe you can't articulate it clearly, but you know something is wrong. You know you're not living the life you could be. You know you're capable of more. But there's something holding you back. Something inside your head won't let you move forward. That something has a cost. And that cost is your life. You understand the mechanism now. You understand the price. Now let's talk about what's actually happening in that overthinking spiral. Let's expose the illusion you've been believing. Chapter 3. You are mistaking rumination for problem solving. Here's what your overthinking brain wants you to believe. It wants you to believe that replaying a problem over and over is the same as solving it. That's the fundamental lie that keeps you trapped. Your brain has convinced you that mental work is real work. Thinking about something repeatedly is making progress. It feels productive. It feels like you're doing something. Your brain even rewards you with a sense of effort, as if you've accomplished something. But you haven't. You've done nothing except suffer. Let me clearly distinguish these two things, because this is where everything changes. Problem solving is focused. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. You identify the issue. You generate specific solutions. You evaluate the options. You make a decision, and you take action. Problem solving is intentional. It's time-bound. It has an outcome. You can point to it and say, I solved this. Rumination is the opposite. It's circular. It's purposeless. It's endless. You think about the same problem from the same angles repeatedly. You never arrive at any new insight. You never generate any new solutions. You never decide anything. You just cycle through the same thoughts again and again like a broken record. These activate completely different brain systems. Completely different. When you're genuinely problem-solving, your prefrontal cortex is active. That's your executive center. That's where rational thinking happens. When you're ruminating, your amygdala is active. That's your threat detection center. That's where fear happens. You're not in a problem-solving state at all. You're in a threat state. Your body is responding as if there's a predator nearby. And you're calling this thinking. That's the delusion you need to break right now. Your mind has learned to disguise suffering as productivity. It's learned to call anxiety by the name of thoughtfulness. It's learned to make you feel like you're doing something when you're actually doing nothing. And you've believed it because it feels intense. Because it feels real. Because it requires effort. But intensity is not the same as effectiveness. Real work produces results. Rumination produces nothing except more rumination. Here's how you tell the difference in real time. Real problem solving happens with something external. You write things down. You talk to someone. You create something tangible. You make a list. You have a conversation. There's evidence of your thinking. There's something you can point to. Rumination happens entirely inside your head. It's internal. It's invisible. Nobody else can see it. And the longer you ruminate without externalizing anything, the more certain you can be that you're not problem-solving. You're torturing yourself and calling it thinking. Here's the test. Right now, think about something you've been overthinking recently. Something you've replayed in your mind multiple times. Now ask yourself this question. Can I write down 3 specific actions I will take about this issue? If the answer is no, then you're not solving the problem. You're suffering from the problem. And those are completely different activities. One moves you forward. One keeps you stuck. You've been doing the second one and calling it the first one. The permission you need to understand is this. Once you've done one genuine cycle of problem solving, the problem is handled by your conscious mind. Your prefrontal cortex has processed it. You've made a decision. You've taken action, or you've consciously decided not to. That's done. Any additional thinking is a waste. It's completely unnecessary. Your brain will want to keep processing because that's what anxious brains do. That's their default setting. But your job is to interrupt it. To tell your brain, I've already solved this. We're moving on. And that's where most people fail. They mistake lingering doubt for incomplete analysis. They think the doubt means they haven't thought enough. The doubt means they need to decide and move forward. Uncertainty isn't a sign you need to think more. It's a sign you need to decide and move forward. It's a sign you need to act despite not knowing the outcome. You don't have a thinking problem. You have a persistence problem. You're addicted to the sensation of thinking about the problem instead of the clarity of having moved past it. Now that you see this pattern, we need to go deeper. Because the real issue isn't your thoughts. The real issue is who you believe you are. Chapter 4: The Identity Beneath the Overthinking. Most people miss this completely. They think their overthinking is about the problem. It's not. It's about who they believe they are. This is the fundamental insight that changes everything. Your overthinking isn't random. It's not happening to all areas of your life equally. You overthink specific things. You obsess about certain topics. You ruminate about particular situations. And the pattern reveals your identity. Let me give you examples so you can see this in your own life. If you constantly overthink social interactions, your identity is tied to being liked. You need people to approve of you. So your brain generates endless scenarios about whether you said the right thing, whether they liked you, what they thought of you. Your mind is protecting an identity that depends on others' approval. If you overthink your performance and competence, your identity becomes tied to being excellent. You need to be the best. So your brain obsesses over whether you did well enough, whether people noticed your mistakes, whether you measured up. Your mind is protecting an identity that depends on being flawless. If you overthink your appearance, your identity is tied to being attractive. If you overthink money, your identity becomes tied to security. If you overthink rejection, your identity is tied to being wanted. Every single overthinking pattern points to an underlying identity. An identity that feels fragile. An identity that depends on a specific outcome. An identity that needs the world to confirm who you are. That's the real problem. Not the thoughts. The identity. Until you shift who you believe you are at the deepest level, your mind will keep generating thoughts designed to protect that identity. Your brain is trying to ensure the outcome that proves you are who you believe you are. It's trying to control the world so you can feel safe in your identity. That's exhausting work. It's impossible to work. And it's why you can't stop overthinking. Here's what needs to shift. You need to move from what I call outcome dependence to value alignment. Most overthinkers are outcome dependent. They need the outcome to be perfect. They need approval. They need to be right. They need to win. So their mind generates endless scenarios designed to ensure the right outcome happens. Their thinking is all about controlling the result. Controlling what people think. Controlling how the situation turns out. It's a battle to make reality match their identity requirements. Value alignment is different. Instead of needing the outcome to be perfect, you ask, did I act in alignment with my values? Did you speak your truth even if it made people uncomfortable? Did you try your best even if you might fail? Did you act with integrity even if nobody was watching? These are questions with clear answers. They're within your control. They don't depend on the world cooperating. The freedom comes from this shift. When you stop needing the outcome to confirm who you are, your mind stops needing to control the outcome. It no longer needs to run 17 simulations to ensure you're safe. It stops needing to replay conversations to find hidden meanings. The constant vigilance becomes unnecessary because your identity no longer depends on the result. But here's what most people won't do. They won't rebuild their identity on solid ground. They'll understand this intellectually and keep operating from the same fragile identity. You have a choice here. You can understand this concept or apply it. Those are different things. Real identity shift requires rebuilding who you are from the foundation up. Your identity should be built on what you do, not what you achieve. On how you treat people, not on whether they like you. On whether you try, not on whether you succeed. This is the only foundation that doesn't require constant defending and reassuring. When your identity is rooted in action and values, rather than in outcomes and approval, overthinking loses its primary fuel. The machine can't run anymore because the battery has been removed. You've now identified the deeper issue. You understand that overthinking protects a fragile identity. Now you need the tools to interrupt it when it happens. Chapter 5: The Power of Interruption and Redirection. Understanding the problem is not the solution. Knowing where your overthinking comes from doesn't stop it. Identifying the identity underneath it doesn't make it disappear. You need to know how to actually interrupt it when it's happening. And you need to know how to redirect what comes after. This is the practical system that breaks the cycle in real time. The moment you notice your overthinking is the critical moment. Not seconds later. Not after you've cycled through the thought pattern 10 more times. Right then. In that exact moment of awareness, the chain can be broken. Your brain's automatic response will be to continue the pattern. It's what the pattern does. It's what it's designed to do. But consciousness gives you a choice. The choice must be fast and physical. This is crucial, so pay attention. You cannot think your way out of a thinking problem. A thought cannot be fought with another thought. It requires intervention. A thought requires action. The moment you notice you're overthinking, you don't need to understand why. You don't need to analyze the thought. You don't need to argue with it or try to convince yourself it's not true. You need to interrupt at the moment of awareness and move your body. Here are the interruption techniques that actually work. Cold water on your face. Immediately get up and splash cold water on your face. This instantly pulls your nervous system out of rumination. The cold activates a different response. It shifts your awareness from internal to external. A specific physical movement. Jump up and do 10 jumping jacks. Run in place for 30 seconds. Do push-ups. Anything that requires your body to move and engage. This shifts neural activation away from the thought loop completely. Your brain cannot be in rumination mode and in full body activation at the same time. A change of environment. The context you're in is reinforcing the pattern. Get out of the room. Go outside. Go to a different location. The contextual cues that trigger the pattern lose their power when you remove yourself from them. Name the thought out loud. This breaks the thought's power because language activates different brain regions than silent thought. Don't just think about it. Say it out loud. I'm having the thought that I said something stupid. Hearing yourself say it creates distance from it. The key phrase to remember is this. Don't try to think your way out of thinking. Move your way out of it. Your body is the tool. Use it. But interruption alone is incomplete. After you interrupt comes the critical second step. Redirection. You must immediately direct your attention to something that requires full mental engagement. Not meditation. Not sitting quietly. Meditation feels empty, and it gives your mind space to bring the thoughts back. Active work. Conversation with someone. A challenging task that requires concentration. The purpose is to hijack your attention system. To occupy it with something real instead of something imagined. You're not trying to never think the thought again. You're just refusing to entertain it right now. Every moment you spend on what's real is a moment you don't spend on what's imagined. That's not a metaphor. That's how attention works. You have a limited amount of it. Where you direct it is where your reality is created. Direct it to what matters. Direct it to what's happening right now. Direct it away from the simulation your mind is running. Here's the daily practice. Notice the overthinking when it starts. That's an interruption. Move your body. Change your location. Say it out loud. Do something physical. That's disruption. Then immediately engage with something real and present that requires your full attention. That's redirection. Do this every single time you notice the pattern. Don't expect to be perfect at it. Expect to practice it. Every time you practice, the neural pathway for the new response strengthens. The old pattern weakens. You have the interrupt. You have the redirect. Now you need to understand why your mind keeps generating these scenarios in the first place. Why does it search for certainty? Chapter 6. Stop seeking certainty and accept forward motion. The root of most overthinking is the search for certainty before action. This is the core trap, and you need to see it clearly. You want to know how something will turn out before you commit to it. You want assurance that your decision is right before you move forward. You want proof that it will work out before you take the risk. You want certainty, and that want is costing you everything. Here's the brutal truth. Certainty doesn't exist in advance. It only exists after you've acted and seen the results. You will never have all the information before you make a significant decision. You will never know exactly how something will turn out. This isn't a problem to solve with more thinking. This is a condition to accept. Most overthinkers would rather suffer through endless mental loops than accept the discomfort of uncertainty. They'll think about asking someone out for 3 months. 3 months. Rather than spend 30 seconds experiencing the discomfort of possible rejection. They'll analyze a business decision for weeks rather than make an imperfect choice and learn from the result. That's the trade. Thinking creates a false sense of safety. Action creates real results. You can have one or the other, not both. Most people choose thinking because it feels safer. It doesn't require risking anything. It doesn't require facing potential failure. You can just keep thinking, and no one can fault you for that. You're being thorough. You're being careful. You're being thoughtful. But you're also not moving. The cost of seeking certainty is always higher than the cost of facing uncertainty. Always. Let me show you this mathematically. The cost of certainty seeking is infinite. Because certainty never comes. You're infinitely delayed in taking action. The cost of facing uncertainty is finite. You might fail. That's painful, but it's temporary. You learn, and you move forward. Certainty costs you everything. Uncertainty costs you a moment of discomfort. That's the actual equation. Every significant decision in your life will be made with incomplete information. This is not a bug in your decision-making process. It's a feature of reality. You cannot change this. You can only accept it. The decision-making process becomes simple once you accept this. Gather reasonable information. Identify your values. Make the best choice you can with what you know. Move forward. Then observe the results and adjust. This is how learning actually happens. This is how growth happens. Not through perfect decisions made with complete information. Through imperfect decisions made with courage. You need to understand something about confidence. It doesn't come before action. It comes after. The person who has already made the call feels more confident than the one still deciding. The person who has already applied for the job feels more capable than the person who is still evaluating whether they should. The person who has already had the difficult conversation feels more secure than the person who is still imagining it. Movement creates confidence. Confidence does not create movement. You've been waiting for confidence before you move. You need to move before you have confidence. This requires practice. The practice of committing before you're ready. Stop waiting to feel ready. You will never feel completely ready for anything important. Readiness is created by doing, not by thinking. The practice is simple. When you face a significant decision, you commit to a choice with whatever information you have. Not because you're certain. Because you've decided. Then you take action immediately. You don't keep deliberating. You don't run more scenarios. You commit, and you move. Your commitment to moving creates certainty, not the other way around. Start small with this practice. Not with huge life decisions. With small daily decisions. When you want to go to the gym, commit and go. Don't debate it. Don't think about whether you're ready. Just go. When you want to call someone, commit and dial. Don't rehearse it mentally. Don't prepare for all possible responses. Just dial. When you want to speak up in a meeting, commit and speak. Don't plan what you're going to say. Don't worry about what they'll think. Just speak. These small practices rewire your brain. They show your nervous system that you can act despite uncertainty. They prove to yourself that the world doesn't fall apart when you move forward with imperfect information. You're building a new relationship with uncertainty. You're making friends with it instead of fighting it. You understand how to move despite uncertainty now, but you're still cycling through the same thoughts repetitively. We need to interrupt that loop at the source. Chapter 7. The conversation you keep having with yourself. Your overthinking isn't random. It's not a new conversation every time. If you actually listen to your mind, you'll notice something. You have the same thoughts on repeat. The same 3 to 5 core thoughts cycle endlessly throughout your day. Maybe it's, I'm not good enough. Maybe it's, what if I fail? Maybe it's, they probably hate me. Maybe it's, I'm running out of time. The specific content doesn't matter. What matters is that these thoughts repeat on a loop like a broken record stuck in the same groove. Your job is to identify those core thoughts. Write them down. Name them explicitly. You can't interrupt a pattern you don't recognize. Most people never do this. They just exist in the constant low-level anxiety that comes from these repetitive thoughts without ever identifying what they are. So they stay unconscious. So they stay automatic. So they never change. Spend an hour just noticing. Write down the 3 to 5 thoughts that appear most frequently in your mind. I'm not smart enough. People don't like me. I'll never be successful. I always mess things up. Whatever they are, identify them. This is the most important step you'll take in this entire process. Because once you've made the unconscious conscious, it loses power. You've named the ghost, and ghosts can't haunt you once you've named them. Now here's what most people do wrong. They try to counter a negative thought with a positive thought. They have the thought, I'm not good enough, and immediately try to argue with it by thinking, I am good enough. That's fighting fire with fire. Both require you to stay engaged in the battle of ideas. Both activate the anxiety system. Both keep you trapped in your head thinking about thinking. What actually works is disengagement. When you notice the repetitive thought, you don't argue with it. You don't try to believe the opposite. You don't fight it. You simply acknowledge it and redirect your attention to what you're actually doing right now. The thought will continue to appear because it's a neural pathway carved deep in your brain. But you stop fighting it, and you stop listening to it. That's the key. Stop listening to it. You wouldn't follow every piece of advice a random person on the street gave you. You wouldn't believe everything a stranger told you. So why do you believe every thought your brain offers you? Your brain is offering you a thought. You don't have to take it. You have a choice. You don't need their permission. You don't need your brain's permission to direct your attention somewhere else. Instead of fighting the thought, you switch channels. Every time you notice the repetitive thought, you redirect to a single anchoring phrase. A phrase that represents what you're choosing instead. Maybe it's, I'm learning. Maybe it's, I'm moving forward. Maybe it's, I'm doing my best. This phrase isn't a lie. It's a truth you're emphasizing in this moment. You don't repeat it to convince yourself. You repeat it to redirect your attention and to build a new neural pathway. Here's how this works neurologically. Right now, your brain has a strong pathway for I'm not good enough. That pathway is deeply grooved from years of repetition. When you try to build a new pathway for I am good enough, you're competing with the old pathway for attention. The old one is stronger, so the old one wins. Instead, you build a pathway for something different. I'm learning. This isn't in direct competition with the old pathway. It's orthogonal to it. It's a different direction entirely, so it can grow without immediately being overpowered by the old thought. You practice this for weeks. Every time the old thought appears, you redirect to the new phrase. The new pathway gets stronger. The old one gets weaker from disuse. Over time, the new one becomes the default. It doesn't happen in days. It happens in weeks and months of consistent practice. That's how new neural pathways form. Through repetition. Through choice. Through discipline. You have control over your thoughts now. But control over your thoughts means nothing if your relationships are destroyed by your overthinking. Chapter 8. Your social life is suffering because of your mind. This is hard to hear, but you need to hear it. Your relationships are being damaged by your overthinking. Not because you don't care. Because your overthinking prevents you from showing up authentically. When you're in social situations, you're not actually there. Your body might be present. Your mind is somewhere else. You're constantly scanning for signs of rejection, analyzing reactions, interpreting neutral facial expressions as judgment. Your nervous system is in a state of hypervigilance. People can feel this. They don't know why they feel distant from you, but they feel it. They sense you're not fully with them. They pick up on the tension. They experience your distraction. And that creates real separation, real distance, real disconnection. Not because you're a bad person, because your mind is pulling you away from the moment. Your overthinking is sabotaging your connections. In close relationships, this becomes catastrophic. You replay conversations looking for hidden meanings. You interpret their silence as anger, even though they're just quiet. You create stories about what they're thinking. You withhold vulnerability because you're running worst-case scenarios about how they'll respond. You become defensive. You become guarded. You become small. Real intimacy requires the exact opposite. It requires presence and vulnerability. It requires saying things before you've run them through 17 mental filters. It requires being willing to be misunderstood. The person attracted to your genuine self is repelled by the defensive, analyzed version you present after running it through your overthinking machine. You're showing them a filtered version of you, not because the real version is worse, but because you're afraid. You're protecting yourself so carefully that you're preventing connection from happening. That's the paradox. The more you protect yourself from hurt, the more hurt happens anyway. Because the hurt is the disconnection itself. In romantic contexts, overthinking becomes particularly destructive. You meet someone, and you like them. So your mind kicks into overdrive. You replay every conversation looking for signs they like you back. You interpret every message obsessively. You wonder if your text seemed too eager. You worry if you laughed at the right moment. You torture yourself analyzing whether they're actually interested. And all this obsessive analysis pushes them away because they can sense the neediness beneath it. They can feel that you need them to validate your worth. The people you attract when you're coming from a grounded place are completely different from the people you attract when you're overthinking. When you show up present and secure in who you are, you attract people who value that. When you show up anxious and analyzing, you attract people who exploit that or who run away from it. You're literally filtering for different people based on the energy you bring. Here's what needs to change. You need to practice showing up fully in relationships. This means making eye contact instead of monitoring their reactions. Speaking your actual thoughts instead of the edited version. Asking direct questions instead of trying to interpret their silence. Staying in the discomfort of not knowing exactly how you're perceived instead of trying to control the narrative. Offering your genuine self instead of a curated version. Every single time you practice this, you build the neural pathway for genuine connection. You prove to yourself that you can be misunderstood and survive. You prove to yourself that people can disagree with you, and the relationship doesn't end. You prove to yourself that authenticity is stronger than control. These aren't small practices. These are the actual building blocks of real relationships. Start with one person, one conversation. Have it while fully present. Not thinking about how you sound. Not analyzing their reactions. Just being there. Just listening. Just speaking. See what happens. You'll feel uncomfortable. That discomfort is the edge of your growth. That's where real connection lives. That's where intimacy starts. You've mastered your social life now. Or at least you understand what's needed. But there's a deeper choice you need to make about your mind. You need to decide who is in control. Chapter 9. The decision you must make about your brain. This is the pivot point. This is where everything changes. What I'm about to tell you will either liberate you or it will disappoint you, depending on whether you're ready to hear it. You cannot control your thoughts. You cannot stop your brain from generating thoughts. You cannot choose what appears in your mind. That's not how consciousness works. Your brain generates approximately 60,000 thoughts per day automatically. You don't choose them. They just appear. The thought, "What if I fail?" appears. The thought, "They don't like me," appears. The thought, "I should have said something different," appears. You have zero control over whether these thoughts show up. But here's what changes everything. You have complete control over what you do with a thought after it appears. You have complete control over where you direct your attention. That is the distinction that liberates people. Experiencing a thought is not the same as being consumed by it. A thought can appear in your mind, and you can simply notice it and move on. It doesn't require analysis. It doesn't require engagement. It doesn't require belief. It just appears and passes, like a cloud moving across the sky. Most overthinkers believe they have to do something with the thought. They have to understand it. They have to analyze it. They have to figure out if it's true. They have to convince themselves it's not true. They have to manage it somehow. But none of that is necessary. The thought appears. You notice it. You return your attention to something else. That's the whole interaction. Clean. Simple. Complete. The gap between the thought and your response is where your freedom lives. That gap is consciousness. That gap is choice. In that gap, you are not a victim. In that gap, you have power. Most people never access that gap because the autopilot is so strong. The automatic response is so ingrained. The thought appears, and immediately the mind follows it down the rabbit hole. There's no gap. There's no choice. Just automation. But you can break that automation. The first time you do it, it's difficult. The second time, it's slightly easier. By the 100th time, it becomes the new default. That's how habits form. That's how neural pathways change. Through consistent, imperfect practice. Not through understanding. Not through insight. Through repetition. Every single day, you reach a choice point. A thought appears. In that moment, you can follow it down the rabbit hole. You can spend an hour analyzing it. You can ruminate about it until you've created 17 new problems. Or you can notice it and return your attention to what matters. This choice is available to you hundreds of times per day. Most overthinkers make the same choice every single time. Follow the thought. They haven't decided differently. They're on autopilot. They've never actually decided to treat their thoughts differently. That's what needs to change starting right now. Your decision isn't to have different thoughts. You can't control that. Your decision is to treat your thoughts differently. When a thought appears, notice it. Acknowledge it. Then deliberately, consciously, intentionally choose not to follow it. Choose to direct your attention to something real instead. That choice is available to you right now. That choice is available to you every moment of every day for the rest of your life. You have a choice. That's the entire truth you need to know. You have a choice. This requires commitment, though. Not just intellectual understanding. Actual daily practice. You're not going to be perfect at this. You're going to forget. You're going to fall back into the old pattern. You're going to spend an hour overthinking before you remember you had a choice. That's fine. That's part of the process. The commitment isn't to be perfect. The commitment is to practice. To keep choosing differently even after you've failed. To build the neural pathway through repetition and imperfect action. Starting today, you are not going to follow every thought your brain offers you. You are going to choose which thoughts get your attention. You're not making a decision about whether to change. That decision is already made. You're deciding whether you're committed enough to practice. That's the real question. That's what determines everything. You've made the internal decision. You understand the mechanism. Now you need to see the life that becomes possible when you actually implement this. Chapter 10. Take back your mind and never give it away again. Let me paint a picture for you. This is what your life becomes when you take back your mind. when you're no longer trapped in endless rumination, when your thoughts become a tool instead of a prison. Picture yourself 6 months from now. You wake up. Your mind is quiet. Not silent, but quiet. There's no alarm clock of anxiety firing off before your feet hit the floor. You have energy. Real energy. Not the depleted, exhausted feeling of someone who spent all night thinking. Actual vitality. Your nervous system is calm. Your body isn't in a constant state of low-level alert. You can breathe. You walk into your office or your workplace or whatever your day looks like. You're present. You're actually there. Your mind is focused on what's happening right in front of you. When your colleague speaks, you hear them. You're not running a simulation of how to respond. You're not analyzing their facial expression. You're just listening. You're just here. And people respond to that. They feel your presence. They feel like you genuinely care. Connections deepen. Trust builds. Relationships become real. You face a difficult situation. Your old mind starts to kick in. What if this goes wrong? The thought appears and you notice it. You acknowledge it. And then you don't follow it. You've practiced this so many times that it's becoming automatic. You simply redirect your attention to what you need to do right now. You take action despite the uncertainty. And something remarkable happens. The action creates the confidence. The outcome becomes irrelevant because you've already proved to yourself that you can move forward without knowing how it ends. Your career changes. Not because you became smarter, but because you're thinking less and doing more. You're making decisions without paralysis. You're taking risks without needing guarantees. You're building momentum. The people who hesitate, who analyze, who wait for perfect conditions are still stuck in the starting block. You're already running. You're already ahead. You're already winning. Your relationships transform. The people in your life feel the difference immediately. You're more present. You're more authentic. You're less defensive. You're less needy. You're just more you. And that version of you is magnetic. People want to be around you. Not because you've changed who you are fundamentally, but because you've stopped hiding who you actually are. You've stopped filtering yourself through fear. You've stopped analyzing yourself to death. Most importantly, you have peace. This is what nobody talks about, but it's the real reward. You have peace. Your mind is yours again. It's not running 17 simultaneous programs. It's not generating scenarios you don't need. It's not creating problems that don't exist. Your mind is a tool that serves you, that works for you, that supports you, not something you're constantly fighting. That peace is worth more than anything else. But none of this happens automatically. None of this is magical. It happens through the systems you're now building, through consistent practice, through repeated choice, through imperfect action every single day. You're not trying to think less. You're not trying to have fewer worries. You're building a completely new relationship with your thinking mind. When a thought appears, you notice it. When your brain wants to ruminate, you interrupt it physically and redirect. When uncertainty shows up, you move forward anyway. These aren't one-time changes. These are systems you're building through repetition. Every single day you practice, the neural pathways that produce the new response get stronger. The old pathways that produced overthinking get weaker from disuse. You're rewiring your brain not through understanding, but through action. You're literally changing the physical structure of your brain through behavior. That's not metaphorical. That's neuroscience. That's real. You are not changing your brain. You are reorganizing how you use it. This is crucial. You're not broken. You don't need fixing. You don't need medication to alter your neurology. You need training. You need discipline. You need a system. You have all three of those things right now. You have the understanding. You have the techniques. You have the commitment. Here's your first move starting right now. The only thing that separates someone who listens to this and someone who changes their life is action. Not understanding. Not thinking about it. Not planning to start tomorrow. Action right now. The next time you catch yourself in an overthinking spiral, you're going to do it. You're going to interrupt. You're going to move your body. You're going to redirect your attention to something real. Just once. That's the beginning. Everything else builds from that single decision to respond differently. That single moment will prove to you that you can. And once you've proved it once, you know you can do it again. And again. And again. Until the new pattern becomes automatic and the old one becomes forgotten. Until your mind belongs to you and your future, not to your overthinking. Until you take back your life. Your mind is about to become your tool instead of your prison. The choice is yours. Your future begins with your next thought. Make it count. You came here this morning because your mind has been stealing your life. Every night it keeps you awake. Every social interaction it makes you anxious. Every decision it paralyzes you. Every moment it fragments your attention between what's real and what's imagined. And you've accepted it as just the way you are. But here's what you now understand. Overthinking isn't who you are. It's a pattern your brain learned to keep you safe. And patterns can be changed. You have the biological capacity to interrupt them. You can redirect your attention. You have the power to move forward despite uncertainty. You don't need a new brain. You need a new relationship with the brain you have. And that starts today. Right now. The moment you finish listening to this, you're going to face a moment where your mind wants to ruminate. You're going to feel the pull to analyze, worry, and replay. And instead of following it, you're going to interrupt. You're going to move. You're going to redirect. And you're going to prove to yourself that you can. That single moment will change everything. Because once you've done it once, you know you can do it again. And again. And again. Until the new pattern becomes automatic and the old one becomes forgotten. This is the life you're choosing, starting now. A mind that serves you instead of imprisons you. A presence that's actually here instead of lost in simulation. A confidence that comes from action instead of being paralyzed by endless analysis. Take your mind back. Your future is waiting.